Hello, this is James Kent. I'm the Movie Morlock, coming to you on audio and visual for this episode. Unless the video doesn't turn out very well, then it'll just be audio. But I'll put together the audio version. You'll probably hear that first, and then check on the website, moviemorlock.com. In the coming days, I'll have a link to the video that you can also watch on the YouTube channel, the Movie Morlock YouTube channel. And then the reason why do you want to watch this? It's because today I have a guest, and you may recognize the voice from a few episodes ago. I had this guest, Shannon from What Shannon Watched, and now she is back, and this time on video with a really excellent t-shirt. And here she is, Shannon. Let's make sure that everybody can see this awesome t-shirt.
Yes, hello. I'm wearing my A Deborah Hill production t-shirt in the classic Halloween font. Horror fans know Deborah Hill as John Carpenter's writing partner, directing, producing, life partner for a hot minute.
Yes, right. Before he met Adrienne Barbeau.
Exactly. So yeah, just giving credit to her for all of her contributions to horror and giving her her due. It's not all about John Carpenter. There was a lady there too. Don't forget.
Yeah, I've been, it's funny. I've been on a little bit of a Carpenter kick because, I think I've made this pretty clear that I'm not a huge horror film watcher. However, October comes around, and it's the 1 month where my wife gets to say, let's watch as much horror as we can handle. And then there's the fun part, is that when I liked horror the most was when I was a kid. First getting a chance to watch horror movies. And now I have a 13-year-old. He's seen pretty much anything he wants to see. And we first tried to get him into horror movies, and he was under the assumption that they would be scary, that he would actually be scared. And then he found that he wasn't scared by these horror movies, and he just found them stupid. So he refuses to watch them because he just doesn't like them. So just like in The Empire Strikes Back there, where they say, that boy was our only hope. And then they said, no, there is another. Well, we have a younger son who's almost 10, and he seems to like horror movies. He thinks they're fake, made up, dumb, and stupid, but he also gets the sort of humor and sort of the mini scares. Like there's little moments within the movies that he finds a little scary. And so he's been enjoying some of them. So we've watched.
That's awesome.
We watched The Fog with him. Those are movies that would probably be PG-13 if they came out a few years later.
Yeah.
And he really liked that. And so we said, well, let's watch the first Halloween movie with it. And he's like, I want to watch that. And so he enjoyed that. I think he enjoyed waiting to see what Michael Myers was going to do and who he's going to kill next. Because kids today already have like a whole built-in mythology of Michael Myers.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you kind of already, it's impossible to like not know the story going into some of the like classic franchises now. Like you just, like, oh, Freddy's the one with the glove and Jason's the one with the mask. And
even if
Michael's the other one with the mask.
Yeah, they're a fun co-op. And,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just like in the culture now. So like watching it, like you already know, like, okay, that guy's probably going to kill some people. You can't really avoid spoilers for some of those older movies. But Halloween is like always up there for me as one of just the best, most classic horror movies. And that's like such a good movie to watch with like a little kid, I guess, is a weird thing to say about horror movies.
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, I get it. If there's going to be parents that are not going to let their kids watch any of these things.
Sure.
But rather than have my kids beg me to watch something, I'd rather introduce it to them. And if they're, it depends. If they start getting scared at certain films, then you don't let them watch other ones. But he's not.
Yeah, you can
like
gauge their threshold for terror, basically. Exactly. Whereas like me, like growing up in the 80s, like my parents didn't care what I watched. Like there was nobody really like monitoring my my media. And then I grew up in a house with older brothers who were just like,
Ah.
this is on, and we don't care about you, dumb little sister.
And
Like
they
you're
probably
gonna
liked the
watch.
thrill of it, hoping that it would scare you.
Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like I was, 7, 8, and my brother is 4 years older than I am. So he was definitely like more in like that 12, 13-year-old age. And I'm still like, ooh, I'm scared, but like I want to be around my big brother. And I guess I have to see this man with a machete.
Well, you had all the tools too. You had a VCR and
Yeah.
cable and things. These are things that
Oh,
when
yeah.
I grew up in the 70s, like that first decade before I was 10, we didn't have any of that in our
Right.
household. So it wasn't, we got to see movies like that at the drive-in is when we
Oh,
went and saw
yeah.
horror movies. So like when I first saw The Fog, it was probably a couple years after it came out, but it was as like the second feature at the drive-in with another horror movie.
Oh, that sounds like such a great like night out.
It was
Like,
the best way to see The Fog because it's like dark
heck yeah.
outside in the woods. So horror movies I always
Yes.
thought were better at the drive-in.
Oh yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like drive-in wasn't really a thing for me ever.
Yeah.
I think by the time I could drive, there was like still one hanging on in my town, and I saw a double feature of what is it, Signs, that M. Night Shyamalan movie
Yes.
with Triple X, the Vin Diesel
Oh, yes, the
movie.
classic.
That's the double feature I saw.
But see,
So,
those are the kind of movies though you want to see at the drive-in. You don't really want to see, like an A-list film. You definitely want to see films like
right.
that at the drive-in.
Yeah, I was trying to smooch the guy I was with, so I didn't really care what was
Oh, I
playing.
see. Yeah, right. Okay. All right. Now kids have to go away from the podcast. No. So there was some questions, of course, in our first meeting when we were talking about that horror movie, Malignant, that I didn't get a chance to ask you. And now that we're back and we're going to talk about some more horror stuff, what is your earliest memory of being afraid of a movie? Like, what was the movie that really scared you?
One of my first horror memories is again an older brother situation, and I later discovered it was Friday the 13th, Part 3, that I walked into the room when he was watching it one night, and it's like something like the punks are in the barn, and
The punks are in the barn.
yeah, there's a big punk storyline in that when some hoodlums show up. But I don't remember I think maybe somebody gets like the pitchfork hay baling thing like
Yes.
through them or something. And I was just like, oh no, like I don't know what that is, but I don't like it. But also, hi brother, can I hang out with you?
So you
And
sat and watched it.
oh yeah, of course, because I wanted to just like hang out with my brother. And he like never had a huge interest in horror. He was never like introducing me to things, but being a teen, he would like watch what was on, and so I would like to be around just, your older brother kind of a thing. So that's how I got exposed to some of that. And then I actually like unlocked a memory recently. So I just watched Night of the Creeps, which is an 80s like sort of alien zombie
Yeah, the
great
tagline is the
mashup.
good news is your date is here. The bad news is he's dead.
Ted
Like is what
Tom Atkins like delivers that line so
Tom
great.
Atkins, yes.
But I rediscovered it like 10 years ago or so because I was like telling my husband, like, I just remember seeing this movie. Like, a babysitter was over and I was up too late. Like, we're watching a movie and like my parents like pulled in the driveway and she's like, go to bed. Like, you've been in bed since you were supposed to be. But the only thing I remembered about this movie was there was a dog and like something came out of the dog's mouth and went into somebody else's mouth. And like, I just told my husband that and he's like Googling, he's like, is it this? And he finds Night of the Creeps. And I'm like, maybe. So we watched it and I'm like, this is it.
That is fun when there's something in your memory and you're like, I swear this is a thing that really happened. And then you go searching and then discover, oh, wow, yes, this movie really did exist.
Yeah, and I must have been like 6 at that time. And so thanks to whoever that babysitter was, like I don't know who she was, but and that's like so much of like the horror that I like now is of that time, like the 80s, the kind of cheesy horror comedy, like not particularly scary. Like that's always been because it's such a nostalgia trip for me to watch some of those older movies because the 80s is just was such a wild and weird time. And I just love the wacky stuff that was going on with horror during that time that we can look back on now and be like, this is so stupid.
I know. And of course, you know, your experience, because I think we established that you're a decade younger than I am. You're alive through the 80s, but you're just a little kid throughout the 80s. So you're experiencing the decade a lot differently than, say, I was, where I was, 10 in 1980, just starting my journey to getting to see rated R films, and then seeing all these horror movies when they came out in the theater, because I don't know what it was, but my parents were under the impression that I was a big horror fan. And, well, because I begged them to see The Shining, and that was the first rated R movie I got to see. And
oh, wow.
So they took me. Yeah, it was a good one to be the first rated R, except for I think it freaked my parents out because, they happened to pick one that had full frontal nudity in it. Which, I mean, that didn't faze me or anything, but they saw that. And they, of course, as we went as a family, my sister, who was 2 years younger than me, she got to go.
Oh, no.
And she was just bored. Yeah. She was just, well, this is the way it was. And after the movie was over, I guess my mom said to my dad, okay, any more horror movies, you can take him.
Can you imagine now taking an 8-year-old, an 8 and a 10-year-old to the theater to see The Shining?
Well, so the thing is that my parents were very young when they had me. My dad was 21. My mom was 18. And so they were still just 28 and 30.
Right. They were still trying to...
They were still wanting to see these things, and how are they going to see these movies that they want to see unless they take kids with? And so my dad, starting around 1981, I'd be like, I know I can get him to take me to this horror movie. And I think that's why, he wasn't always interested in every film that I might have wanted to see because I was a movie guy, but I knew he might take me to see Scanners.
Oh, God.
He might take me to see Deadly Blessings in the theater. So I would get to go see these movies when they were actually in the theater. And then the Friday the 13th movies, I, of course, wanted to see them. And it was no. It was a hard no. And my dad never saw the first Friday the 13th. But he saw the second one with his brother. And
which the first 10 minutes of that are just, here's what happened in the first one.
Right. We got the good fillers. But he'd kind of forgotten about it. And then, I don't know if it was later that summer or the year later, they did a whole big double feature, Friday the 13th Part 1 and 2. And they released it in the drive-ins and the cheap theaters, right, to make a few bucks for a weekend. And I'm like, Mom and Dad, Friday the 13th Part 1 and 2 at the drive-ins. That's a pretty good deal, right? And so we all went and saw both films at the drive-in, and my dad had kind of forgotten about those first 10 minutes that happened in Part 2. So when that scene came on at the end of Part 1 where she's in the canoe.
Oh, yeah.
None of us knew what was going to happen. And when Jason jumps out of the water, our entire car just shook and almost tipped over. We were so scared. My dad flew popcorn all over the place. And
that's so good.
That was the last time I remember being that jump scare, really scared for that one moment. And I didn't think that I was very scared about the movies. And so we saw the second one, it was whatever. But then that night, and I feel like I've told this story once years ago on the podcast, when I used to do the other podcast. And that night, there was just the overwhelmingness of, I guess, Jason and all that stuff got to me. And I started to have a panic attack. I was starting to hyperventilate in my bed, and I woke. I didn't know why, but I couldn't breathe. So I came out, and my parents were still there, and I'm just and
oh no,
I didn't want to tell them. I really didn't associate it with being afraid, because it was I think of being afraid while you're watching the movie, but it was an after effect that clearly
The lingering effects.
I was
Yeah.
afraid that maybe Jason was going to come and get me in my sleep or something.
Of course. Yeah. Like I remember as a kid, like having nightmares about Freddy, like those like nightmares where you wake up and you're like, I can't move. Like I don't want to move. I'm so terrified.
But see, that's where the good horror comes in, is that I always feel that it's not about how scared you are watching the movie, but after, do you have nightmares about it? Because if you did, then that movie did its job, right?
Yeah. Or if it's like 2, 3 days later and you're still thinking about like, whoa, like I can't believe I saw that. I can't believe I watched that. Like, just for instance, I just saw the movie, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Titane, that French
Oh,
movie
I want to
from,
watch that.
whoa,
Yeah,
it's so good. I absolutely loved it,
I
but
can't
like,
wait to watch it.
it's so, I don't know. Like,
It's so
the movie
original and weird, and
finished, like, my friend and I just stared at each other and we're just like, okay, yeah, that's what we saw. And like
excellent.
I'm pretty sure somebody like walked out about halfway through. Like she was just like,
So you
I'm
saw it in the
done.
theater.
Yes, we're lucky here that the local independent theaters are requiring proof of vax or
Right.
negative COVID test. So I did venture out to the movies a couple times last
Oh,
week, and
good. Oh, couple.
trying to
What was
go.
the other one?
I saw Lamb, another
I've heard this
movie.
movie. Tell me about that, because I've heard the name, but I can't remember what it is or who
Yeah,
made
it
it, or
has Numi Rapace from
okay.
the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo
Mm-hmm.
movies. It might be a first-time director, but it's an Icelandic film,
Ooh.
and it's about this couple that just lives out like in the middle of nowhere. They're just these farmers, and so one day, like their sheep, one of their sheep gives birth to something,
Uh-oh.
and then
We have a
what
Black Phillip
happens
situation.
next?
Okay.
It's just like I don't want to say anything more and like
Okay.
try to avoid
But it's sort of a horror-ish. It's a
trailers.
horror-ish kind of movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and it's really I would liken it to something like The Witch,
Yeah,
Robert
yeah, yeah.
Eggers. Like that's just like folk horror, like farming, slow burn, gets to the end, and you're like,
Yeah, it's funny when you say folk horror. A lot of it is a slow burn until the end, right? And now you saw another folk horror movie, the reboot of Candyman, which is considered folk horror.
oh, are we calling that horror? Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Well, okay, I'll tell you, the little sidebar here is there's a theater in Cambridge, very famous, very old, the Brattle Theater. And they've been a revival house for like, good 60 or so years. And it's in Harvard Square. So, I mean, it's just got a following, and it's a great place for people who love movies to be able to see stuff all the time. And starting this weekend, they're doing like a whole week-long series. It's called like Folk Horror Beyond the Wicker Man. So they have pulled together a curation of films that are folk horror, but they're not the Wicker Man. And they have some very obscure titles, but they also have the original Candyman they're showing. So isn't it the original Candyman, which I have not seen in years, and I have not seen the reboot, they were studying like different mythologies, right? And
Yeah,
folk
and
tales.
that's
And
like Helen and her partner, whose name I can't remember now.
I know the
Damn it.
actress in real life. She's a
Yeah,
director,
it's
Cassie
Cassie
Lemons. So,
Lemons.
yeah.
Yeah, who is really great. See, Eve's Bayou, right?
Yes,
Is what
she
she
directed
did.
East Bayou. Yep.
I do love that movie. Um, but yeah, they're like doing their master's thesis or something on urban legends, and so they decide to research this urban legend about Candyman, who's like lives in like runs Cabrini Green, and so
I
that's
shouldn't look behind me, right? Thankfully, there's no mirrors back here.
yeah. I was trying after we watched the new Candyman. I tried to get my husband. I'm like, let's go and say Candyman 5 times, and he's like, no.
It's
I'm
like
like,
maybe
what
we
do you
should just.
think is
It's like
gonna
I know
happen?
yeah. We should just maybe stay away from that.
Yeah, he's
Wh-
like, I know nothing's gonna happen, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, why take a chance?
And honestly, same. I don't really actually want to do it.
Did you say something about the Squid Game? Is that what you just said?
Oh no, no, no. Oh God, no.
I'm sorry.
I haven't watched that.
Oh, you have not watched the Squid Game.
I
Can't take
have
the Squid
not.
Game challenge. It's good.
Oh, no. I don't know what that is. It
So
might
wait,
involve me dying.
what about the reboot? Was that good?
Yeah, so it's more of a sequel actually. So and I never saw any of the original Candyman sequels, so I don't know like what
There's more
mythology
than one.
those
See, I
built up.
only knew there was Candyman. I didn't know there
Oh
was
yeah, there's
Candyman.
like Candyman 2 Farewell to the Flesh, and then I
Okay.
think there's like a third one. I don't know. Whatever. I hope Tony Todd got paid and is like living a nice life off those Candyman checks. I love him.
Well, and if not, the Final Destination checks you can cash
Oh
in.
yeah, yeah.
My wife's a huge Final Destination fan. She loves those. She
Dude,
made me
I
watch
watched
them
that
all
whole
those.
series for the first time like 2 years ago, and I'm on board. Yes, like the fifth one with the twist in the fifth one that I don't
I don't
want to
think I've
like.
seen the fifth one, but my wife probably, or maybe I don't know. They're all blending in.
See, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to like spoil anything if you
Don't
haven't seen
spoil.
it. But like the last like 10 minutes of the fifth one, I was like mind blown. Like I'm on board. I fucking love these movies.
I love. I just don't get it. This is so great. You've got like the orange sweater and then the Deborah Hill production shirt.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
excellent. I just love it.
It's a favorite shirt.
So so folk horror is a genre or a subgenre, I guess, that you enjoy out of horror.
Apparently, like now that these things that I'm talking about, I'm just realizing like, oh yeah, I really do. I do love this.
Well, I think that's what's interesting when you break it down and you start thinking about horror. What kind of horror movies do you tend to like? Some people like the haunted house movies. You know, some people like the unstoppable slasher killer, like the Mike Myers
Yes,
and the
I do.
Jason.
I love a slasher.
And then the folk horror, which usually ties in, some mythology. So, I mean, I don't know if it would be considered, I guess, folk horror, but there's like the Babadook
Oh
is
yeah,
it's kind of folk horror, which my 10-year-old watched this year, and he enjoyed.
awesome. I need to rewatch that one. It's been a while
Oh,
since I've
oh,
seen
you
it.
have seen it, but not in a while.
Yeah, yeah. I just
Yeah.
need to. It's been. I think I watched it when it first came out. I just need to revisit it. That's what I find I'm doing this month. Like I try to watch a lot of horror movies in October, and I'm just wanting to rewatch a lot of my favorites. I'm finding like, ooh, we need to watch that again. Like I'm kind of wanting to watch Evil Dead, and I want to watch Midsummer again, and They Live, and
That's another one that we watched when I was talking about Carpenter. We watched that with the 10-year-old, and he really liked that. And that's where, so we watched They Live, we watched Fog, we watched Halloween, and then suddenly I'm realizing we're watching a lot of Carpenter. He's also seen The Thing. So,
The Thing is one of that's an annual watch in this house.
yeah.
That's one of my husband's favorite movies. So, and actually during the pandemic, last October, a
It's a
local
perfect
theater.
pandemic movie, by the way, 'cause it's like,
Yeah, so a local theater, you could rent out the theater
yeah.
for your friends and like pick your movie, and we picked The Thing, and it was so fun to like actually like be back in a theater with friends, a limited number of people, just like in the huge theater, like eating popcorn and watching The Thing, which is such a great movie, and yes, great pandemic watching. We did that twice actually, and the other one we watched was Alien, so just really this is what happens when you break quarantine.
Right. Yes. So yeah, and of course I know that you like Midsummer a lot, and that's of course it's one of my wife's favorites.
Yeah, not to bring that up again.
No, well, I mean, but that's I think a great folk horror, and of course it kind of builds on the director's Ari Aster's Hereditary, which is another folk horror movie. I feel that Midsummer's more successful. That's just my own particular.
I agree. I
like.
agree.
There's
Nothing
and of course,
controversial.
well, we got a main film. It's funny you reached out to me, which I was very thrilled, by the way, that you reached out to me because I kind of wanted to have you back on the program again, but I was like, I don't want to just reach out to her so soon. She'll be like, I just was on the show. But then you reached out to me, and I'm like,
Luckily,
yes.
I loved listening to the sound of my own voice for an hour. So
Yeah, so you're like, can I do that again? You can. You could do that.
this guy's
whenever
gonna
you
let
want
me
to.
talk more? Okay.
Yeah, it was awesome. Well, believe me, the last few episodes I've been talking to nobody. I've been doing it by myself. It's not as easy as one might think to get guests to come on a show.
Oh, well,
Well,
then
because
I
every
will.
celebrity in the world now has a podcast.
They do.
Yeah, and of course they're celebrities, so they get a lot more cachet than I do, and so it's hard to get anybody to come on your show.
Yeah, I mean, like I had to tell Conan was like calling me like you got to come on. I was like, you know what? I
Right.
think I'm gonna do James's podcast again.
Yes, the wise choice. Um, but before we get into what you reached out and said, hey, we should talk, though a hint, we've just mentioned folk horror a bunch of times. So you're watching the Halloween movies again.
Yes.
And I figured in anticipation of this new one, Halloween Kills, that had just come out. And I actually thought you might have gotten to it. So I watched Halloween Kills, but now I found out you haven't seen Halloween Kills, so I don't want to talk about Halloween Kills.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Like you can give like impressions, just like no spoilers. Like I've seen the headlines as I'm scrolling through social media, and I just try to
Right.
not absorb any information. But hopefully this weekend I'll get to it.
Well, most of those Halloween movies are terrible.
Confirmed.
Yeah, but yet
Somebody
we still,
who's just watched all of
but yet we watch them anyway, right? So there's just something appealing, even when they never live up to our expectations.
Yeah, especially like I just finished 4 and 5, and I've never seen 6 before. So when I watch that it'll be my first viewing. But I'm excited for Paul Rudd. I know Paul Rudd's in it.
Yeah, I haven't seen 5 or 6, or then I saw H2O, but then I didn't see the one after H2O.
Yeah, I haven't seen Resurrection. So
Yes, I haven't seen that. So
that's on my list.
I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna see these movies because now I'm gonna be full completionist. I have to see all of them.
Yes, and unfortunately, I discovered I'll never be a completionist because I cannot watch that second Rob Zombie.
I have not watched the second one because I hated the first one. I just hated it.
Me too. And like my husband is like, if you want to turn it off, just say the word. And yeah, so I was like, no, I'm gonna see this through, but I'm definitely like not watching the second one because I hated that first one so much. There was nothing that I liked about it.
Well, it's as weird to say about a Halloween movie, but if a Halloween movie could be mean-spirited, that's it. For some strange reason, there's a tone to those Halloween movies that Rob Zombie thinks the others just weren't scary, and here he's going to make it scary. But it's kind of ugly.
That's ugly is like a perfect word for it. It's just like not a single nice person exists in this world. Like everybody is just awful, dialed up to 11. Like everyone in Michael Myers is past, which again, like the last thing I need on any slasher is backstory. Like you're not there because you're invested in like Jason Voorhees. Like you want to see him like just slash up some co-eds or whatever. So that's like the Rob Zombie ones are very much like, here's Michael Myers' childhood. It was awful. He killed. And, and it just like really tries to make his childhood so miserable and gross and unhappy that you're like, well, of course he would kill people. I don't know. I don't understand the point of it. It was just, and I don't like Rob Zombie. Like I've never seen any of his movies because stylistically it doesn't appeal to me. But I was trying to do a thing, and
as a filmmaker, he's interesting in that I've seen House of a Thousand Corpses, and I saw it. I was sick, and this goes back many years. It was on cable, but I was like sick with like the flu or something, and I was up in the middle of the night, and it was on. And it's one of those you watch it in the middle of the night, and you're afraid.
sure.
So it's effective there. The second one that he did was a sequel, which was I don't remember what they are. They're the Devil's Rejects, and again, very unpleasant. But I saw something in him as this guy is an effective filmmaker. He actually could put together a movie. I'd love to see him do something non-horror. And maybe this guy can go somewhere. And then, he was going to do this Halloween reboot. And I was like, well, this ought to be interesting. I think this guy's a pretty good filmmaker from what I saw in the last movie, that he could do something. And then he started going this way. with the
Yeah.
And then Halloween 2 I didn't see, but then I saw the Witches of Salem or the Lords of Salem,
Lords of
and that was
Salem, yeah.
really bad. And then he did some other film which was like in a sort of a carnival or something with bad. And it's just, he is stuck in a zone that he likes to make a certain type of film a certain way,
Yeah.
and I don't know.
That's his
not my
bag,
thing.
and like, studios giving him money and to do it. Their movies clearly like make money, so why not? I just, I know it's not for me, and that's
Yeah.
fine. If somebody else just like loves it and really enjoys his stuff, like that's great. We don't have the same taste in movies.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe someday I'll check out this Halloween 2, but it looks like there's a lot of his wife in it, playing Michael Myers' mom as a ghost, and I'm just like, no, enough. Sherry
Whoa,
Moon
she's a
Zombie.
ghost in the second one?
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know.
Okay, maybe I do want to watch it.
So then there's the reboot, and I thought that they kind of missed I thought there was a couple of things that I liked about the 2018 movie, but overall it's not what I would have done. So then this movie comes along, and I really don't have many expectations for it. And of course, my 10-year-old who had just watched The Fog and just watched Halloween, he was downstairs wanting to read his new manga comic that he was reading. And we said, well, we're going to watch this Halloween Kills, and it's probably not like the first Halloween. It'll be very brutal, pretty violent. And he's like, well, I just want to read my book in here. And I think he wanted to look up at the screen, and we're like, okay, but listen, if it's just too intense, you got to go upstairs. He watched the whole movie. And he was enjoying. He's like, I think there's a kill coming. Like he was into it, and it made it more fun because we were having fun. But
Right.
they did some things in this one that I think that if they took a lot of the plot points from this movie and had brought it into the first movie and kind of reshaped that instead, you could have one great movie. If they had done just one movie and did a really good thing, but you now have two movies with an intended third movie, I guess. And so I'd say the third act of this film kind of falls apart. But for the first 2/3, I really enjoyed it. I loved what they did. They bring in some characters, some callbacks from the original, and I thought they did some great things. And they also, at the beginning of the movie, have an actor who's also a director. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he did The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which I mentioned. And
Okay.
he's usually very funny. He doesn't play a comedy role here, but just seeing him show up in the movie was great. And so again, I give it, for a Halloween movie, I give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
But it's still also
high praise. Just one thumb up.
just one thumb up, because the other half got cut by Michael Myers because he's just chopping up everybody in this movie. It was a little ridiculous,
yeah.
but
That sounds par for the course for him. But no, I'm super excited to watch it. Again, like I'm not expecting to be blown away by it, but I didn't hate the last one, so
if a Halloween movie blows me away, I'd be shocked. But it's funny though, when more you watch Halloween, like I watched it again this weekend, it is surprising. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that Halloween movie. There's just some real, it was a real low budget movie, and there is some stuff. My favorite is that Laurie and her friend, is it Annie, are driving down the street, and it's like daylight, and then they turn the corner to go to the babysitting job, and it's completely pitch dark. And then
sun
there's
sets
another.
fast in Haddonfield.
That's right. It just the sun drops. Because the hour change.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Mike Myers is like running all over town in that car that they don't seem to notice is right behind them, and he's wearing the mask, but then. And this is all day, right? She's in school. There's after school. He's everywhere with this mask. No one's noticing them. But then they're going around the corner on their way to the babysitting, and they hear the fire alarm at the hardware store. And she reaches out and says, Dad, what's going on? Oh, somebody broke into the hardware store and stole masks and stuff. I'm like, what is this alarm been going on for 7 hours? Because he's been wearing that mask. Like, what's going on here?
We can't figure out how to turn the alarm off. It's just been going all day.
So clearly these are just like, these are editing things and stuff, and it's just silly, but you just kind of go with it. And also, what's the deal with the babysitting? We never see any of these parents that are supposed to be in the house, and The one, she is going to see her boyfriend, Paul. The other two let themselves in and are all excited because no one's around. Well, they're like in some stranger's bedroom and they're having sex and smoking
They're
and stuff. Like,
teens, baby. They don't care. They don't know about consequences.
were they gone for like a cruise in October? What was going Where were these? We never know.
I love that you like never really see any adults in the movies. Like you see Annie's dad because he's the sheriff, but like adults just like don't factor into this world. Like Dr. Loomis is the father figure for everyone. He's the one adult that's allowed to be around.
It was funny just to watch some of these blatant things that were staring at me, but the things that they do in this movie that none of the other movies ever do, which was so great, it's the subtle things where instead of the just popping out and grabbing you, there are the scenes where you have somebody on the side of the frame and then you have a darkened doorway and slowly they bring the light in and you see Michael Myers and just, it's like you, the audience, is seeing him before the character is, and you know he's coming, and that creates a tension that's better than any jump scare.
Yeah, I love that when you're just like, oh my God, when you just see it there, like when you catch it as the viewer, I love that more than like a boom, like a door slammed shut. That's just supposed to, like, to me, that's like really cheap. And so like, I don't love movies that are a lot of jump scares, like, and that's always been my problem with like James Wan and the Conjuring movies and stuff like that. I feel like it's just a lot of like door. Oh, it's just the cat.
Like,
ha ha.
I mean,
ha.
I'm sure the studios are demanding like we got to have how many jump scares, and
Yes.
for a lot of people, that's what they think is a scary movie. If they're going to get scared
Absolutely.
in the moment, I would rather
Yeah.
have it be a creep. And I guess that's what brings us. What's interesting is I don't know in folk horror. I'm glad it's got a subgenre because I'm not sure that some of these movies are necessarily that scary. And that brings us to kind of one of the granddaddy of all folk horror movies was 1973's The Wicker Man.
I love this movie.
And you said you wanted to talk about it, and I'm like, hey, okay, that was a favorite of mine growing up, so I'm definitely down to discuss that film.
Yeah, it's become one of my favorites over the years. I only saw it for the first time maybe 10 years ago. One of my best friends, she's the one that has introduced me to a lot of horror. Like she showed me Suspiria for the first time, and The Wicker Man was oddly a movie that we would watch together in the fall. Like we would be like, hey, do you want to like work on your Halloween costume and like come over to my place and like throw on a movie? And so The Wicker Man was something that she would put on. And so like I really associate the movie with fall and with October, even though it's like it's May, it's the springtime, like it's the opposite of fall in the movie. But just the fact that it is a horror movie and that I associate it with this time of year, it has become like such a cozy fall movie for me. And I don't know if it's like all the wind and like Christopher Lee's tweed suits that just still like evoke a feeling of fall for me. Yeah. That's one of my Halloween costume I want to do is Lord Summerisle, like when he's dressed as like the leader of the parade.
First of all, are you aware of all the not the controversy per se, but the whole deal with all the different versions?
I've read a little bit about it on Wikipedia,
Okay.
but I didn't pay too close of attention to that. Is there something you would like to enlighten me about?
Well, I don't know what you've seen. Like, have you seen the standard, like 88-minute version? Have
Yes.
you seen the extended versions at all?
Yeah, I've seen the 88-minute version, and there's like what, a 93-minute version?
Yeah, and there was originally a longer one, and supposedly the negative was destroyed, and
Right. Which
so
I'll take any Wicker Man footage that you have. Like I love this movie.
well, so I've seen, and it's hard piecing my memory, but several years back, and I think we had rented a DVD of it where there was the extra footage that they had available still, and we watched that. But when I was a teenager in the late 80s, I saw it in the theater at this theater that I used to go to all the time, that I mentioned on the show all the time, the Somerville Theater. And they had what was considered at the time, they still had prints of it, this extended 99-minute cut. There was the full version that's not available. So I saw the whole full version of it, which takes place on the mainland to start, when he gets the letter and you get information where he's the super religious kind of prude, and the other cops are kind of making fun of him, and that you get the information that he's getting engaged and that he's not had sex yet, which, keeping that stuff in mind, that it's not in this version, yes, you do have to kind of pay attention because it's not mentioned very much in this movie, but it is mentioned. It is mentioned that he's a virgin. And I think that by not having that whole opening, it's better because there's a little bit more mystery that you have to solve as the viewer. I think gives it away too much at the beginning if you have that whole opening.
Right. I was going to say, the times I've seen it, the first few times I saw it, I didn't really have a problem piecing that together. I think the ultimate version that I've seen, I think they do a good job of piecing it together. When you have that scene where Britt Eklund is trying to seduce him through the walls, and he's having his flashbacks of being in church and taking communion and all that. So that's again, I would still like to see that additional footage, but it doesn't seem necessary.
Now, that scene, which is great, where she's singing that song, the folk song,
I love
and she's banging on the door.
Need to find this soundtrack on vinyl.
Wicker Man
every time I'm at a
soundtrack.
record store, I'm looking for it because it's just, the music in this is so good. And I think the first time I saw it, that's what really drew me in. That opening corn rigs and barley rigs and corn rigs are Bonnie song that's playing as he's flying the seaplane. The first time I saw it, and I'm with my friend Jerry, and she's vouching for this movie, and I trust her judgment. But just this music, I'm like, what the hell is this? But you best believe the next day I have that song stuck in my head.
Well, it's so great is that it's very unassuming. It kind of draws you in. It's a mystery, and at times sort of a mundane mystery. And it's not, I don't say it's suspenseful, and you don't feel like it's creepy, but ever so slowly towards the end of the movie, every single time, it just starts getting deeper and deeper. And it really gets you. And by the end of it, it's that last 20 minutes of the movie is just, it hums along so fast, and it's
perfection. And I think the creepiness doesn't fully kick in until until Sergeant Howie realizes what's happening. And so leading up to that, it's not exactly scary, but you're suspicious and uneasy because you're being given, or Sergeant Howie is being given all this different information, Rowan never existed, Rowan obviously did exist, and just this going back and forth, and you're like, what the hell is happening? And when you first see it and you don't yet know that all of the Islanders are in on it,
right.
And that how he's going through this Mayday rite dressed as the fool, and you can feel his fear, are they going to behead him when they do the 6 swords and stuff like that? That's where it really starts to you really start to get uneasy. But the point where Sergeant Howie turns and sees the Wicker Man for the first time, when he knows, and you see it in his face that he realizes there's no way out of this situation. That is true fear. And I think the movie just does such a good job of you're just inhabiting Sergeant Howie's experience, and that sudden drop, that pit of fear in your stomach, you're right there with him, you're not getting out of this, we're going in that Wicker Man.
But you know why this is such a great movie is that, I don't know about you, but every time I watch it, you know exactly how it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
But yet somehow you think this time maybe it could be different. maybe somehow he is going to get out of it somehow. And
Yeah.
it's like that Romeo and Juliet thing. Whenever you read it, you're like, something's going to happen. This time it's not going to go the way it always does, but it always does. And that's what's so great about this movie is that even though you know it's going to end the way it ends, there's something about it you feel hopeful that, because it gives you all those, he gets all those outs. They give him all these tests because they don't want somebody who's not pure. That's not going to help them. And
That's
so,
not willing.
yeah. And so it's always so tragic because if he just gave into his temptation with Britt Eklund.
Yeah. Or if he just like stopped being a jerk for 1 minute. Like, I don't like Sergeant Howie.
Well, you know what's funny is you say that is that I've gone through different things doing the different stages of watching this over time. I think as a kid watching it, you know, I was like, this guy is awesome and these people are nuts and crazy. But the last time I watched it over the weekend, I'm like, boy, this guy is such a jackass. He kind of deserves his fate.
I was just thinking after this last time watching it, I wonder because again, like the whole island is in on this, which like bravo, like a community coming together to like for working towards a common goal. Like when do you ever see that happen? So like kudos to the inhabitants of Summer Isle. But I have to imagine at some point they're like, you know what? I don't even feel bad that we're gonna sacrifice you because you're just being a jerk.
Well,
Because he
it's
just
a movie
comes
about
in
religious.
like
It's about religious tolerance. He's not a tolerant guy.
except like he comes in and is immediately like, what are you doing? This is wrong. You don't have a church, you don't have a minister, you're not teaching these kids. Yeah. Oh my God. And I before we got on this call, I had to rewatch the scene where Sergeant Howie goes to Lord Summer Isle's house to like pure comedy. Like Christopher Lee in that scene is so perfectly deadpan and just nonplussed by Sergeant Howie's accusations and the derision. Like it doesn't when he tells Sergeant Howie that like Jesus was the son of a virgin impregnated by a ghost, and you just see Howie's face like that is so just like boom, like Lord Summer Isle's like check and mate. When he's like complaining about the young girls like jumping naked over fire because they want to be impregnated by gods. Well, I was gonna say also in that scene like where he says Howie calls him a pagan, he's like a heathen maybe, but certainly not an unenlightened one. He is so good as Lord Summer Isle. Like I love that character and I love that he's just like so unflappable while Sergeant Howie is like losing his mind at this paganism and like this lack of the one true God. And it's like again, like the Islanders must have been like, I'm glad we get to kill you. I would feel if somebody just comes into my like nice, idyllic, like beautiful island life and is just like, you need to worship God. I'd be like, ugh.
This guy, Evan Woodward, who plays the sergeant, he is so right in his convictions, but at the very end, right, he doesn't want to go in there. He doesn't want to die. And so at the end of it is calling the question, like Lord Summers, I was like, this is perfect for you, right? You get a chance
right,
to.
Yeah, you get like the martyr's death.
Yeah, you're going to get to go on, right? You believe in an afterlife, so this shouldn't even be a big deal for you, right?
Yeah. And he's like, oh God.
Oh, so great.
It's so good. But I want to circle back just because we like touched on it. The scene with Britt Eklund, Willow, trying to seduce through the walls Sergeant Howie in the inn where he's staying. That was another scene where I'm watching it for the first time with my best friend, just like, what are we watching?
Right.
There is a nude woman like banging on walls and singing, and I watch it now, and that scene, like Britt Eklund is so perfectly cast in my opinion because she is just like the walking embodiment of like femininity and like fertility. She's just like blonde hair, like young, healthy, like round in the places she's supposed to be, and like
When Britt Eklund's doing that dance and she's against the wall, that's a body double. She was pregnant in real life. She had discovered she was pregnant during the shoot, and she's like, I can't do that. So
see,
they
she is the embodiment of fertility.
Yeah, so it was like, she's like, I just can't do that. And of course, Britt Eklund was an international star, and she was always in these movies, but she didn't speak English very well. So in almost any movie you ever see her in, she's dubbed, and she was dubbed in this movie as well because
Oh.
because she's like, she's like Swedish or something. So
Right, yeah. But that scene, it's supposed to be a seduction of Sergeant Howie, and it's just she is Summer Isle, like embodied. And the scene is just so bizarre and funny and weird and amazing. And it's a movie that we've been talking a lot today about slow burns. Like this is a slow burn, and I wouldn't fault anybody who would say like, I don't know, the first like 30 minutes or whatever are kind of boring, because he's just getting the runaround and trying to figure out like find this missing girl, but it ramps up so slowly, and when it does start to ramp, like it really just like punches you in the face like with that
oh yeah,
terror. And then at the end, when you're able to like when you have all the pieces of the puzzle as a viewer, like you really get to start to realize like, oh, these people are like kind of sick. Like they planned this whole thing, this like huge like psychological mind game, like whatever research they did to find this one like super Christian copper, which that's Christopher Lee says like something about meeting a Christian copper at some point, which I just think is so funny that he still uses that like a slangy word like copper. Guessing from I've seen the remake, the Nicolas Cage
the
remake,
bees. Yes, that one.
which we can get into that if you want. That's a real great movie. But yeah, I'm remembering in that version, there is like he knew the woman who has the missing daughter. So like there's probably in the original or like in the source material, there's probably somebody knows somebody on the police force and probably heard like, ugh, this guy is such a downer.
One of the things I like about The Wicker Man is that it tells its entire story in 88 minutes, like an hour and a half. And today that movie would have to be like 2.5 hours. You're like, everything you need is right there in the film. It moves along and it's very economic, but you feel like you've watched a longer movie.
Yeah, the fact I'm always surprised when I see that it's like 88 minutes. And yeah, and I'm like, I wish it were longer, but it doesn't need to be. It's like the perfect little length, and it does everything that it needs to accomplish in that time. And it just has such a hold on me. It evokes so many feelings in me, just like a feeling of coziness, but like dread and fear, and much like Midsummer was so lauded for like it's a scary movie that takes place like in broad daylight, like it's always daylight, and like that's The Wicker Man is largely during the day, and you have very few scenes at night, and it proves that there's like things are just as scary in the daylight. Like it doesn't need to be dark for somebody to want to use you in a pagan ritual and murder.
Right. Well, because like in Midsummer, some of the things happen off screen, but they happen in the daylight, and
exactly. Like the day can be just as terrifying.
yeah, because
So
the climax of Wicker Man does not happen at night.
it does not. And so here's a question that it just occurred to me to ask last year when my husband and I watched it, because I just showed it to him for the first time last year, and he absolutely loved it. So I'm pleased, and he has made it like part of our regular rotation. So, what do you think happens at harvest time? Did the ritual work? Are there their crops on Summer Isle,
Will they
or
get those apples out on the boat this
yeah,
year?
are you team Summer Isle or team Howie?
Oh, I mean, I think that it's a lot like what he says is that, yeah, maybe if the other weather conditions are right and everything, yeah, maybe you'll have the crops. But see, that's why it's so great is that Edward Woodward is a contradiction. And he believes in the rational, and he thinks that these pagan rituals based all the stuff on the science and stuff is hooey. And he believes, though, in something that, like Christopher Lee points out, is a ghost story. And so it's what everybody believes in things, and it's about faith and commitment. So, you know.
And I think the inhabitants of Summer Isle committed, and they will have a great harvest.
Let's hope so. Yeah. We'll get you one of those Summer Isle Harvest Festival 1973 shirts.
I would love that. Do they make that? If they don't, you should
they
make
do.
that.
There's
okay.
ones out there. But you have to find the reputable source, right? There's a lot of
Of
people
course.
like on those like Red Bubbles or whatever those things are, Threadless and everything. And you got like your shirt looks like a good quality shirt.
It is, yes. I think, who is it? It's Tees on Scene, Tees on Scene, I believe was the website, if anybody else. Yeah, they do and I think a lot of their profits go towards like supporting women and like queer, non-binary people in filmmaking. So also supporting a good cause.
It's funny because seeing the font and that color, that is one thing that Halloween Kills. It's got that original credits.
Yeah, I love that they like keep that purity there because it's just so iconic. Why would you change it?
Exactly. And I think that's the thing that I've had with these Halloween movies over the years. And I think they did a pretty good job of the last two is that mask-wise, I love the mask in the first movie. It is so creepy and scary. But the reasons why that, and it goes back to why this movie is so effective, it's that brilliantly stark white face. Every time they've tried to change the shape of it or change the color or dirty it up and stuff, it just ruins. Like, I want Mike Myers to just look like Mike Myers in these movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just having that like nice, the bright white in the dark, so you just sort of pick it up when he's coming up behind somebody.
But I have to admit, sometimes it's strange when I don't like a film like the Halloween movie from 2018, wasn't a big fan, and then it shocks me that I like this next one, and then other people are like telling me, "You're crazy. That was terrible." And I'm like, "What do you mean it was terrible? Like compared to what? To what other Halloween movies? I mean, they're always going to disappoint. This movie disappoint just by the fact that it knows that it's going to be another one afterwards. That's going to ruin a great ending for this one."
Right. Well, and I don't know if like what the deal was with the Halloween reboot. I don't know if they initially were like, yeah, we're just going to do this one. And so, which I honestly I prefer like just do one really great movie. Don't give me three kind of okay movies.
This is the way these studios are like, why have one when we could have three?
I know. Exactly, because yes, I'm gonna go see it. I'm going to pay money, take my money, but I'm gonna complain about it on the internet.
I know we've talked about horror on both appearances, but the next time,
Yes.
You'll have a different shirt from a different producer who does like romantic comedies or something.
Yes, I have my
Nora Ephron
oh
shirt.
yes, thank you. I was gonna make that joke, but I blanked on the name. Damn it.
Sorry. I know. I was like, Nora Ephron. Yes.
Yeah, who
She
can I
did
pull?
all
Who
the
can I pull?
romantic
Nancy Myers. Nancy
Nancy
Myers.
Myers. That's
what
right.
I
You'll
was
say a
thinking of.
Nancy Myers production. All right. Well, that's a different discussion. We can certainly have the romantic comedy discussion if you want another time.
In February, we'll do like rom-com con and just talk romantic comedies.
But we'll see how this video turns out. The video turns out great. Well, we can do the video the next time. And if it doesn't turn out great, we can do audio. But we can still do video just to talk if it's easier. I don't know.
Sure,
Did you find
yeah.
this easier to talk with the video? Or you're like, no, you know what? Audio is better if I didn't have to look at them.
No, it does help with facial cues just to see
Okay.
like, oh, I can see he has something to say, and you can see me like gesturing wildly because that's how I talk with my full body, uh, so you can see all my nervous moves. But I know like the sun's going down now, and like my lighting is getting
Oh,
very
I never even think
dark,
about.
and
Yeah, I never even thought about that. That here it's already dark, and I'm in a basement anyway, so I've had to. I have to have studio lights, of course, because
yeah, we
otherwise
have
it'd be
like
really dark.
poor lighting. If I could reach it, I would plug in this pumpkin
I do like the pumpkin, yes,
back here, and
I
then it
like
would
this
just
little
be.
figure in the back that is like a dancer guy or something.
Oh yeah, those are my little. It's Willoughby and Mortimer. Those are my little my vintage lute and flute players.
So very good. Well, I do hope that you'll think of something else that you were like, I want to come back on and talk about this movie because this was great. I always enjoy Shannon from the Pacific Northwest. That's what I'll
Yes,
say.
and again, like I love to talk movies, and if I find a willing ear, I'm happy to chat for a while. So I think I'll definitely come back as long as you'll have me.
Oh, yeah, you practically could be the co-host. Like, you just don't know
Take
it
it
yet.
over.
Yeah, that's right. Movie Morlocks. And I just spent all the effort to change the name over from the other program, and then I'll have to come up
Add
with
an
another.
S.
Yes, right. And then I'll just get my wife to create a second cartoon character of another Morlock.
Hi.
But that will have a shirt that says a Deborah Hill
Yeah.
production. Yes. Okay. Well, the plug is what Shannon watched. That's the
Yes.
Instagram page that you can find.
Yes, check it out. I'm watching all spooky movies this month, along with many, many other people.
But listen, people out there in viewing land and listening land, this is the Movie Morlock, James Kent, and thanks for listening to the show. And again, thanks so much for Shannon coming on.
Thanks
What a
for
treat
having
for
me.
me because it is just fun. Like, first of all, like you actually said, "Hey, let's want to watch this movie. I love this movie," and I was like, it was a great opportunity to watch something that my wife like loves watching every year anyway. And I
Exactly,
haven't seen
yeah.
it in a while. It's been a while since I
Good
watched it.
excuse.
And again, as soon as that Britt Eklund and her stunt double dance comes in, you know you're in for a movie that is not going to be quite like anything else.
So good.
Well, this will be airing before Halloween, so there's still a lot of time left to get costumes ready and get ready for the big day and see some more Halloween films. And so I definitely will be looking forward to checking out your Instagram page to see what else you've watched, because I do like to see what you've got up there and what your
Yeah, a lot
thoughts
of
are about it.
classics. A lot of classics come in.
Well, of course, I'll be looking forward to your review of Halloween Kills and see what you thought, because you're probably a more important critic of the movie than I would be.
I'm
'Cause
more invested.
Yeah. Though I think this weekend or in the next couple of weeks, we're going to try to hit up some of these other Halloween movies, like the 5 and the 6 and the 7. And
I mean, I think 3 is the one that's always worth revisiting.
Season of the Witch is the best. Yes.
It's so good. It's honestly like in a horror franchise, it's like refreshing to not have to deal with the same killer and like come up with another reason why he came back and like why he can't die, and like
It's Halloween adjacent.
it is, and I just love that it's like part of the canon that it's just it's like a nice little breather, like take a break from Michael Myers, and then because yeah, like 4 and 5 are not good. They're not good movies. Like you're just trying to further this story of a killer, and it's like no, like it's more fun to just like have a sort of central theme and like make stories around that don't have to be connected. But that's
Everybody, the great Deborah Hill production, Shannon.
thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. I love that.
Bye.
I love it. So good.